Hello, this is John. I'm on my own. Pri is out on a date with a Chevy Silverado. No, I'm here to give a content warning for the movie that we're reviewing in this episode, Crash from 1996. It's a very violent, graphic, and disturbing movie. So if that's not your thing, no hard feelings. If it is your thing, you're demented and sick like we are. And enjoy the episode.
The first verse of California is, "First I'm gonna kill you, bitch." That's not it. Okay. Do you know when, yesterday when I was watching this movie that we're about to talk about shortly,
Yes.
you didn't know what I was watching because the TV was turned towards me, and you came over and you saw the screen and you just whispered, "Ew." And so that's the crux of this episode today.
Yeah, luckily this is possibly the most obscure movie we will ever do.
Let's do a content warning.
Yeah, right off the bat. Okay, I actually want to talk about the content warning.
Yeah.
I want to get meta on the meta content warning of the meta content of this episode.
Okay, Zuckerberg.
We're talking about David Cronenberg's Crash. Now, this isn't your dad's Crash that won Best Picture in 2005, all right?
Your dad's Crash.
This isn't your fucking grandma being like, "Oh, Paul Haggis, you solved it."
This is
This
the good
is
one with Ludacris.
Crash. This is the real Crash
Yeah.
from 1996, a David Cronenberg CanCon classic.
Ugh.
And the content warning is that it's very sexually graphic.
Mhm.
I would say it's actually kind of moderately violent, but violence and sex in this film are very intertwined.
Yeah, it's the same.
And so it's hard to not talk about that kind of stuff. And so we're going to talk about it. So that's our content warning.
Yeah. The warning
and
is that...
Also, I just got to say, if you're under 18, you shouldn't be watching this movie anyway because it's against the law.
You could go to horny jail.
Yeah.
And real jail.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
Yeah. Can you just watch porn like a normal 18-year-old?
God.
God.
Sorry, Cronenberg.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I love this movie.
This movie is,
Oops.
now that that's over with, it's so good. And here's
Yeah.
my thing about the content warning. Well, I agree that it's imperative that we give a content warning for the graphic nature of what's shown in this film. I was saying to you that I actually don't find this film that disturbing because when I watch it, I'm not like, these people are such fuck-ups.
No.
I just think they're doing, and to be fair, it is also a film. If this was happening in real life, which maybe it is, I'm not here to kink shame anybody, but when you're watching this depicted in a film, it's so surreal that I'm just kind of like, also, the movie goes out of its way to make it the most unsexy shit you've ever seen.
This is, my God, thank you
Yeah.
for saying that, because it's like the loneliest movie about sex.
Yeah.
There's people doing it, and they're both so melancholic in parts, and like even the pleasure feels like it's intertwined with just sadness and like inescapable existential dread, where they're like, the only way we can feel anything real is by total and utter annihilation.
Even the film opens with Catherine. She's bent over the wing of a plane, and this guy is going at her. And even then, you notice she's not getting pleasure from the guy kissing her and stuff. She's like touching this plane wing.
The cold metal
Yeah.
is what is more thrilling.
I don't actually, unlike something like Antichrist, which is like specifically violent and angry, I don't find this movie as shocking and disturbing as that. I think.
No, if anything, I know the book. You've read the book.
A couple times.
J.D. Ballard's.
J.G.
J.G. Ballard.
J.G., yeah.
Get a better name, Ballard. I'm just kidding. Just G. Ballard is talking about it in a way that is more of like a warning, or just like, hey guys,
Well,
try not to, fucking drive.
Can I give like a little background on my relationship to this book and therefore J.G. Ballard? So I read this book in university in the best class I ever took, which was Gender, Sexuality, and Literature. I may have mentioned it before, but we read this book and it was pretty divisive in the class. But the prof was great and she did a really good job of kind of explaining what it was. But it also like ended up having, it was like the most interesting conversations we ever had were surrounding this book.
Nice.
So J.G. Ballard, he's more well known for like, well, actually, he wrote a lot of books, and a lot of them are like sci-fi books. But he's ultimately been well known for this book and another book called Atrocity Exhibition, which was his first kind of like novelette kind of thing, which I've read and it's okay. It's like a little too smart to be an entertaining novel. That's the thing. Is like he was a very smart and intelligent man, and also fun fact: Danny Brown named one of his albums after that book.
Oh shit!
It's called Atrocity Exhibition.
Oh my god.
And then this book, which is about the kind of collision of technology and sex, kind of became his lasting legacy. Not to mention the fact that a movie I've never seen, but lots of people obviously have. The film Empire of the Sun by Steven Spielberg, with Christian Bale, plays a young J.G. Ballard.
Really?
That movie is based on J.G. Ballard's memoir about being interned in a Japanese prison camp during World War II when he was a child. He lived, I believe, in China and with his parents, and then they were imprisoned. He wrote a memoir about it, which is apparently really, really good. I've never read it and I've never seen the movie.
Sick.
That movie is really hard to find.
It is true. It hardly
I would have
streams
watched
anywhere.
it so much, and I've heard it's really good.
Yeah.
And I've never seen it on streaming ever. I don't know what's happened to it, and it got like nominated for Best Picture. Like it was a big deal, and I've always really wished to see it. If anyone has a DVD, I can't watch it because it's a DVD. But
why are you asking, you goose?
So that's like the extent of what I know about him.
Yeah.
But his large concern has been about this dystopian nature relationship between technology and people.
Yeah.
And in this book and film, it's about technology and sex.
Yep.
Can I read a quote from something? Sorry,
Sure.
You were about to talk, but I have just one more thing.
No, go ahead.
I read this kind of like this thing by the author Zadie Smith, who's very famous, very good author. She recounts the time she met J.G. Ballard and how she calls it a car crash. She said it was terrible and that they didn't get along very well and stuff. But then she talks a lot about Crash, which she had read and been very scandalized by, and had really disturbed her at the time when she was like a feminist college student kind of thing. And but she had revised what she felt about it, is what I got the sense of. And she said something really interesting. She said, "In Ballard, the dystopia is not hidden under anything. Nor is it, as with so many fictional dystopias, a vision of the future. It's not the subtext, it is the text."
Yeah.
And I found that in this book and in this film, and I want to get deeper into this, and I'm sure you're about to say something about it. Cars, remember this book is written in 1973. Cars are the pinnacle of technology.
Right.
And that's not true now. But at the time, you have to think
shiny
about that
thing.
idea that cars are really the pinnacle of consumer technology.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we have a different relationship to what the pinnacle of consumer technology is today. But that's why I think this movie is interesting to watch.
What is it today, you think?
Well, the internet.
Okay,
which is interestingly intertwined with pornography and sexuality a lot.
Sure. I thought you were going to say like a material object. Like a car.
You thought I was going to say one of those orbs that's going to scan you and give you world coin, right?
I thought you'd be like Apple phones.
The iPhone 1.
The iPhone is intertwined into my skin.
I think the iPod Touch was the pinnacle of human technology.
I too wish to be tantalized by my iPod. Oh God. But like, okay, to Ballard's point, when he talks about when you said that the intertwining of technology and the human body and just us as an existence is kind of a cautionary tale, something maybe we should be mindful of without consuming it too fast, too quickly, too much. But Cronenberg, in retelling this in his movie, makes it seem to me as like a kind of a romance, as like a sad, just like exploring existentialism with this kind of romantic pursuit of this particular form of consumerism.
Can I throw another quote at you by
Yeah.
another famous person?
Hit
Maybe
me.
not a quote, but I'll explain what they were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Roger Ebert liked this movie. He gave it 3.5 stars.
He
Um,
he gave it. His review read like he kind of gave it a good review accidentally.
However, do you remember what he was talking about in his review? That he was like, strip away the violence
Yeah.
and the cars,
Yeah.
and you have a rom-com.
Yeah.
And the car crash where Spader and Holly Hunter meet is
Yeah.
the meet cute.
Yeah.
And the dead husband is the husband that Holly Hunter
Was already gonna leave.
was already going to leave for Spader.
Yeah.
And you strip all of that away and you have the weirdest like romantic comedy of
Yeah.
all time, that structure. But Cronenberg has made this other thing. Yeah. Which gets to another point that I want to maybe talk about too. I feel the very same way about Fight Club.
Mm-hmm.
Which, as I watched this, I was like, there's lots of similarities between this film and Fight Club, both the book and the film.
Yeah.
But the film, the way Fincher had made Fight Club, is like, there's romantic comedy elements to it. It's just a lot about men beating each other up in a basement as well.
Yeah.
But Jack Edward Norton's character's whole thing with Helena Bonham Carter, I mean, it's a romantic comedy.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. If this, instead of cars, if it were punchy fighting, it would be a similar film.
Yeah.
Where they find some meaning in the dreadful existence.
I think they're very similar films.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Anyway, tell me what you think about this. God damn it.
This is a Canadian film.
Baby, yes. This is one of the very rare movies that has been adapted from one context into a Canadian context rather than the other way around, right? There's been lots of popular culture that have been written by Canadians set in Canada.
Yeah.
I want to mention one, a series on HBO called Station 11 that's largely set in Toronto.
Yeah.
And they adapted it to Chicago because Chicago is the Toronto of America.
Of
but
course.
also I think the worry is that when an American sees a city outside of America, they're just kind of like, wait, that's
What
not
is-
Paris. So it must be China? Because it's so...
Yeah.
Because Toronto is such a massive city. But the thing that's so interesting about this is there's good reason to adapt this to Toronto. And do you want to know why?
Why?
I read this on Wikipedia. It might not be true anymore, but at the time of making of this movie, the 401 in Toronto was the busiest highway in North America and had a section of it called Carnage Alley.
Oh, shit.
Where there's so many car crashes that's why it was named that. And maybe Torontonians can tell me I'm wrong. However, this was over 30 years ago. This movie was made, right? So
fair.
at the time though, that was what a lot of reviewers brought up, was like, it's actually interesting
Damn.
that this is set in Toronto. Yeah.
And it's still like all the empty streets of Toronto, the shots at night, all of even with all the sex and all the crashing and lack thereof, it still feels like such a sad, kind of lonely film.
Yeah, the book, which always struck me, was like the book takes place in like close to Heathrow Airport all the time, and it's like he specifically set it in the. Now I haven't been to London in a really long time, so I don't remember, but it's like he set it in kind of like the most drab, boring part of London.
Yeah.
And it's the same with this, is like there's nothing beautiful in any place they go in this. It's all fucking
No.
warehouses, highways, parking lots.
Yeah.
When Spader gets in the car crash, they take him to the airport hospital and it's totally empty.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, it's such an interesting, but you're right. It's a purely Canadian film.
It's the true subconscious of every true Canadian.
Well,
What's going on in your mind?
yeah. But it's also like, it's one of the better Canadian films ever made.
Yeah.
You know, Cronenberg is like our best
What's
director, him and
Cream of
James
the crop.
Cameron, right? But like I don't think Cameron's ever made a film in a Canadian context. So I
No.
don't really, and neither has Villeneuve, but like, oh no, that's not true. And Incendies is fucking amazing. And it's
shit,
sort of
right.
set in a Canadian context,
True.
but a large part of it takes place in the Middle East. But yeah.
You can tell when a movie's made by someone really horny. And this is
You think this is a horny film?
Cronenberg's all about that life.
Is he?
Yes. Of course it's masked in like sadness and capitalism.
Sorry, have you
and
ever watched a Cronenberg movie?
Of course I've seen all of them. I'm just saying. He feels like someone who wants to touch everything that is supposed to be high-minded with like, okay, but puss.
I'm sorry, but
Okay, but flesh.
every time Cronenberg makes Viggo Mortensen fuck on film,
Yeah.
it looks like Viggo Mortensen's dick is being stabbed in
Having
the
the
vagina
worst
by a
time.
spike. Like he
Yeah.
looks like he's in pain every time he has to fuck in a Cronenberg
Well, that's
movie.
the sweet sadness of it, right? Like Cronenberg wants to have a good time. David, listen to me. I know you want to have a good time doing it, but he's burdened by the world we live in. He just can't stop thinking about all the sad shit going around him, that he's making sex kind of needlessly a horrible experience.
I think he's really interested by it and is kind of like is happy when movies can make it not erotic.
Yeah.
To examine what sex kind of is.
Yeah, otherwise it would be slot away as some frivolous, lusty film.
Yeah, but like I don't know. He has lots of scenes in a lot of his movies that are like uncomfortably unsexy.
Yeah.
Like in History of Violence and in Eastern Promises. I know a History of Violence sounds like it's going to be a fucking hot, erotic, sexy film.
rom-com
But
of
it's
our
actually
times.
not. It's pretty fucked up. Yeah. Yeah.
What I'm saying is Cronenberg can't come unless he's hit by a bus. Okay? But that's his own thing.
So you're saying, much like Ballard, the author, putting himself in the book, Cronenberg is putting himself in the movie as Spader.
Yes. And he becomes him so much. Like, Ballard also kind of famously said that I couldn't have, like, it's not just humility when he says that this movie did a fucking smashing job of bringing my book to life in a way that the book probably couldn't have.
Did he like it?
He loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he would, yeah.
And of course only Cronenberg could have done something
Yeah.
just incredible. Like this movie in, let's say, the Neon Demon director Nicholas Refn's hands would have been shocking.
Yeah.
Would have been way more graphic, I think, and wouldn't have been as sad.
Yeah.
It would have been glamorous, if anything.
Probably.
This movie in Cronenberg's hands, this book in Cronenberg's hands does the job that the book did too.
Yeah.
But it makes it more sad.
If I remember correctly, Ballard also said in that quote, he was like, yeah, he did a great job. I came like 6 times when I watched it. Didn't he said that, right?
Well, he
said that in the
he
press.
He will not admit it because he's a serious guy, but he's like, yeah, all right.
I think like it's so interesting because if you ever read the book, which I caution people against because it's actually harder than this film. I think. Also, like, who reads these days? Come on.
I can't read.
But like it's one thing we talked a lot about in the class that I was in was the very it's like you're reading an accident report by a medical orderly. It's very medical, and they always use the proper term for things. And it's always it's weirdly makes it more disturbing. The more I've never seen the word pubis used so much.
Oh my god.
And it's also like everything is like vividly described, and because they use these like very medically accurate terms, you're just kind of like, oh my god. Like,
I mean, they
so
cast
wild. Yeah.
The leading lady in this movie is Sylvia Plath herself. Just every time she has sex with James Spader's characters.
That stuff is very. I don't know if it's directly lifted from the book. I can't remember, but it's very book like the book. When Spader is recovering in the hospital and she starts talking about the accident, and she describes what the medical guy told her, is like, that's what the book is like. Just pages upon pages of that stuff, and it's really. And even the part which we loved where they're having sex and she's talking, she's like fantasizing out loud, but like it's she's using all of these like proper sexual
very
terms.
clinical terms, very
yeah.
much just stuff you would read in 8th grade biology.
That is what the book is like.
And so a lot of filmmakers, right, they walk this kind of interesting line between sex and death and machine and flesh. What's interesting about the way I think Cronenberg does it is that this movie goes beyond just body horror. It goes beyond just science fiction, and it's a completely new adjacent genre, like techno porn romance or whatever. Like it's like 4 things melded into one and then just like painted on with melancholy.
Can I throw a quote at you that
Yeah.
is very much like that?
Yeah.
You and Zadie Smith, man, you guys are on the level.
Oh shit.
It's like a porno movie made by a computer. It downloads gigabytes of information about sex. It discovers our love affair with cars, and it combines them in a mistaken algorithm.
There you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
And because there's the element of like quote unquote love, because the two characters, James Spader and Deborah Unger, are a married couple. They're in an open marriage and they want to explore all this shit. It's just rich people shit. They're doing all this on the side, but because they're so done with like what normal has to offer, that they have to find pleasure in something as extreme as death.
Let's get into the plot then.
Let's do it.
Because you've just given basically the backstory. So James Spader. Now we're revisiting Spader, and literally this is I believe the next movie he did after our favorite,
Black Phone?
Stargate.
Oh shit! Oh my god, the one we covered. My bad. All right.
Yeah. It is the year after Stargate.
Really?
I think. Yeah.
It's after Stargate.
No, it's 2 years after Stargate, but it must be very close to after him. But he was probably very working.
He's still very
a lot.
young. He's got a baby face going on. He's still very very much a quiet, likable, creepy guy.
I thought it was like really admirable that when he joined the Office, the cast of The Office, they did that whole episode of him fucking a car in the tailpipe just to like reference this movie.
Is it right over? He bent Kevin over the desk and was like, "You're my secretary now.
You're my Remington now." Yeah. No, they did a whole episode where they did a reference cavalcade to all of the great work of James Spader, and
sick.
fucking a car. No,
Oh,
they
okay.
did. No, they never did that. No, they never did that at all.
This is why the show couldn't take off like the way UK Office did.
All of that period with The Office was just like, what
It's
exactly
going
are we
on.
doing without Steve Carell?
Yeah.
Have the guy fuck a tailpipe. I don't care. So Catherine and James Ballard, James Spader, James are in a kind of a dull open marriage thing where they're just allowed to fuck around.
Yeah.
And it literally opens with like two sex scenes with Catherine having sex on the wing of a plane and James having sex with his production assistant, which is something no one in Hollywood has ever done or has ever gotten in trouble for.
God no.
In a camera room.
Thriving industry.
Which I found really interesting because in both of those scenes, the woman has her hands on a piece of technology. Right?
Oh.
There's literally a shot of the woman's hands in James Spader with her hands on like a camera box.
Oh, interesting. Okay, okay.
Yeah, which I think is like subtly thematic, obviously.
Nice.
There's so much sex in this movie and it just kind of like ceases to feel sexy at a certain point.
Yeah.
And so they know about these affairs that they have, and there's an important thing that they talk about that like she asks him, she's like, "Did you enjoy having sex with your production assistant?" And he's like, "No." And then she says, "Maybe next time, maybe the next one."
What's cool is that when they're talking about, obviously they're in an open marriage like before, and they're on a balcony talking about, well, how was yours? Did you come? And then she says no. And then she asks him, well, what about your girl? Did she come? So she doesn't even ask if he had fun. She's just like, how are the women doing?
Yeah. And also
not good.
And also both of them look wistfully out onto the highway after this scene.
They're
just like
motorways.
I didn't come either. Traffic's busy.
Hot traffic.
Hot traffic.
It's just like, I cannot relate, man.
So James gets in a car crash. He gets in a car accident where he kills the other driver. The other driver comes flying through his windshield, and Holly Hunter is in the car across. And she immediately gets, as you do, she immediately whops a tit out and is like, check this out.
In her defense, she's trying to unbuckle her seatbelt, but in doing so, she pops open her shirt and like
she does a little
Janet
Jackson.
Yeah. She JJ's
I shouldn't really say that was Janet Jackson because it was really Justin Timberlake.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
She JT's her TTs.
She JT's, yeah. They end up in this hospital, and James has this really fucked up leg. It's like, it's like it's crazy that he walks in not that long because it's like it's in a huge metal brace basically. And Holly Hunter is also in the hospital recovering from her injuries. Her name's Helen Remington.
Also
And then they also meet Vaughn, played by Elias Koteas, who's a fucking wonderful actor.
What a force, man. Incredible cast.
He's such a good actor. He's
Yeah.
really underrated.
If the only thing that kind of took me out is because I've seen Holly Hunter in other things before I saw her in Crash. And so it just wasn't believable that, like, man, Holly Hunter, a sex icon? Like,
this is actually an incredibly stacked cast.
Yeah,
Except
every name is a big name.
But all of them like went on to be bigger.
Yeah.
You know, like much later in their careers. Elias Koteas is like one of the most reliable bit part actors in the world.
Yeah.
Deborah Unger, she hasn't as much, but she was also a model, right?
So, I feel like Rosamund Pike came up and was like, you know what, I can do 100% what you do and also kill a man.
Yeah.
So that's, yeah.
Sorry, but then also Gabrielle is played by Rosanna Arquette.
Yes, Rosanna Arquette.
Yeah, it's a really interesting cast.
Damn.
She comes up later though, in a really really neat scene. Yeah.
Oh, we'll get to that in great detail.
Yeah.
All of them that they introduce us, and very quickly you kind of find out that they are trying to liberate themselves of their confined sexual urges. And surprisingly, they are all big fans of automobiles.
They're all a bit horny and they don't know why.
Yeah.
But they're about to find out.
Until they see a car.
Yeah, like James and Helen start an affair after they go to find their own crashed car to get it like from the impound lot.
Yeah.
And like that's obviously like that's like them perusing like a sex exhibit essentially. They're like there. And they start an affair, and then Helen takes them to one of Elias Koteas' character Vaughn, his like performances, where he tries to recreate the car crashes of famous people.
Yeah.
In the middle of nowhere, Toronto or whatever, with this stunt driver named Colin Seagrave.
The way that scene starts with him just holding a mic, dressed in like a mechanic's outfit.
Really cool.
Fantastic. That is one of my favorite sequences across cinema.
It's really fascinating because I remember I'd seen this movie. This is the second time I've seen this movie. And the way it starts, I forgot that was the scene.
Yeah.
And you don't realize he's talking into a microphone for like about like 15 seconds as it starts. And then you're like, oh yeah, this is the scene where he's like explaining everything.
Yeah.
And like, it's really interesting. And so they perform this head-on crash essentially. And then they pull out Seagrave and Vaughn, and then the Department of Transportation is like, you guys shouldn't be deliberately head-on collisioning on this abandoned
get on
racetrack.
Out of here, you silly gooses.
Hey, you silly Canadians.
No one
get
gets
outta
arrested.
Here.
Nothing happens.
Yeah.
They all just go about their merry way after having...
Nothing happens. What are you talking about? 50 people just came.
I'm sorry, nothing good happens. And everyone smells like just gross.
Sorry. I think our content warning should also be that we're going to say a lot of disgusting things.
Sorry, guys. Let me just get all of them out right now. I'm just kidding. Slowly but surely. It's very apocalyptic right away.
Yes.
They don't even wait for it to kind of become like a slow burn that tells you of the nuances of death and life and car and sex. And straight away, it feels like... sorry, go ahead.
I just want to point out one of my favorite kind of moments, which I only noticed kind of this part. James is giving Helen a ride back from the impound where their cars are.
Yeah.
And remember they talk a lot about like, have you noticed that traffic is heavier after the car crash?
Yeah.
It's like, have you noticed like traffic is like so much traffic? And she's like, yeah, I have noticed it. And then she says something that I found, or he says something, one of them says something that I found like very ominous, and it's a really good line. He says, all these cars were gathering for some reason I didn't understand. There seemed to be 10 times as much traffic. Yeah. And it's like, it's this feeling that they're being
that tech is
closed in by the technology, right? Yeah. And they only notice it now that they've like crossed over to this other kind of plane of feeling.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating.
I thought it was more like once you buy a white car, you look around, all you see is white cars everywhere on the street.
Maybe.
Or even if you think of wanting to buy a car, all you see is the one that you want every single place.
But also,
because you're hyper aware.
Yeah.
You're so focused on that.
But I've also I've never been in a serious car accident. After you have, you must feel some anxiety by driving again, right?
Yeah, which is why I don't.
yeah.
I got hit by a truck and now I only fuck trucks. But I don't drive them.
I ride trucks, but I don't ride them.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
There's
Sorry.
there's something interesting too in that. I want to append something to that Zadie Smith quote I said earlier about dystopia, because she quotes something that Helen Remington says in, I believe, this same scene, but it's not in the movie, it's in the book. And she says, after her car crash, how do people manage to look at a car, let alone drive one?
Oh,
And
God.
Zadie Smith goes on to say, but drive she does, as we all do, slowing down motorways to ogle at an accident. Like the characters in Crash were willing participants in what Ballard calls a pandemic cataclysm that kills hundreds of thousands of people each year and injures millions, which I found fascinating.
It's sick.
It's all like,
yeah.
but it's kind of, they're hinting at what you said earlier about how Catherine and James are driving past sex and towards death, like the death desire.
Yeah.
And the only thing they can do to get off further is to drive towards death rather than just, plain old boring, just having an orgasm.
Normal sex. Who wants that?
Yeah.
No, it's like he like fucking Cronenberg, man. He gets that this entire movie needs to have a weird, like, warped lust at all times. But what he fits into every single moment of, like, sexual arousal or, like, sex act is this complete lack of interest, or seemingly on everyone's faces they're just like, ho hum, we're just not satisfied in indulging each other unless it's literally 3 seconds of us crashing into another car.
A lot of what you might see as normal is humdrum to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even any other kind of fetishized sex to them would probably be just as boring because it lacks momentum.
Yeah.
Momentum that ultimately leads to their death.
Yes.
Well, not that they die, but I'm just, or do they? Find out.
Tune in.
I love that beyond cars and stuff, like, lust is also commoditized.
Yeah.
Like sex, like whatever, latex gloves, whatever, fishnet stockings, all of that shit.
Like braces.
Stuff you gotta buy to put onto your malleable, shitty human body until you become this, like, glowing piece of technology that cannot be destroyed.
Yeah. There's a scene after the James Dean car reenactment, moving forward with the plot, where they're all sitting around together. This is the part that made me think of Fight Club a lot.
Yeah.
Is that they're all sitting around watching a video of crash test dummies in a crash, and they're all like, they all look like people watching porn together, they're just dead silent, but also like if you see the wide shot of that scene, Rosanna Arquette is literally, like, touching between her legs.
Yes.
Like just gingerly just there.
Yeah.
And then like Holly Hunter is like leaned forward, and then she's like, oh.
Stop. There's part is in slow motion, and then the crash test dummy flies out of the windshield, and they're like,
but it reminds me, the aspect that reminds me of Fight Club so much is the way that, like, this group of people discovering this higher plane of feeling that's outside of the norm. When Ed Norton hits Brad Pitt for the first time, and then Brad Pitt hits him back, and then he's like, hey, hit me again. Hey. Like that stuff. I just find so, it is just such a connection, I think, between these. Yeah.
Cause what else is a human body but just like a container, or just like a vessel for this kind of crashing and movement and, like, collision. And because it's so fleeting, maybe the ultimate desire is to be able to kind of crash and be hit and do all of that, but still kind of sustain yourself. And the only way you do that is by being one with a machine, like being one with a car.
You're balancing on the edge of death, though, right?
At all times.
Like, so something that something that's very clear in the book, in the most basic understanding, and this is kind of clear in the crash test dummies scene, the most basic understanding of a car crash is your body gets hit really hard against other stuff. Yeah. And when we talk about the theme of this movie being the melding of technology and the body, it's like, well, they're literally smashing together to see if it will stick. And it never does stick, right? Because that's not possible.
And that's why it's sad.
But the feeling is that's what they want. Yeah. There's so much talk about, like, in the book specifically, where they talk so much about, like, the steering column getting pushed back into the person's chest in a head-on collision, and like the head hitting against the steering wheel, and then like even like they get into details of like
the whiplash
the whiplash and parts of the car coming up and like hitting them right in the groin and things like that, and it's just so like
visceral.
It's so visceral and insane, and then the aftermath of like the aftermath feels like the aftermath of like an intense sexual episode or something, and it's so fucking crazy.
The entirety of the accident is like climaxing. Great.
Yes.
But in real life, in normal, I keep saying normal, but what I mean is boring, really. In Missionary, it wouldn't be
God.
It wouldn't be as compelling as getting hit by a truck would be. So it's so cool that Cronenberg is just like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna find a way to show that.
Yeah.
Without humans, but just I don't know, like a POV of car ramming into another one, but the whole time you're thinking about sex.
I also think the Crash Test Dummies scene where they're watching the video is a way of showing that without having to do it with the actors, because like how can you really show it?
Yeah.
Like the extremity of a very extreme car accident, right?
Yeah.
And which is like why the stuff with Vaughn and Seagrave wanting to create these famous accidents is like even when they're talking, so they do the James Dean one, and then they want to do Jane Mansfield's accident, where like the rumor of Jane Mansfield was that she was decapitated in a car accident, which isn't true, but that was like a rumor that persisted for years. And they want to that like extremity, and he's trying to reach it in a way that doesn't kill Colin Seagrave, but that he can still like experience it, you know.
I feel this way about like watching a movie, any movie that made me feel a certain way, and then being like, oh man, I don't think any other movie will make me feel like this for a long time. And I feel like for these people, it's like, oh, no other sexual act can make me feel the way that 5-minute car accident did.
Yeah.
And so they just keep wanting to pursue it to like a suicidal end.
Do you not see, or do you not feel the connection between this and like pornography though? Like
not at all. I feel like it's so, because it's a constant. Like it's not like a thing they aim for or a thing that they're pleasured by. Like they don't even need their penis or vagina. They don't even need their sexual organs to have sex. It's the feeling that's like somewhere in their gut.
Yeah.
There's a scene that reminds me of James Spader's character just trying to have sex with this girl in braces, right, in the car, to the point that he's like, okay, sure, she's she's got boobs, except great, good. But then there's a scar on the back of her leg that's kind of shaped like a vulva.
Very pointedly shaped
very
like a
obviously.
vulva. Yeah.
And then obviously he doesn't have, obviously he can't penetrate it, but he still rubs up against it enough to the point that they both climax. So it's not even that they need to have sex organs to do it.
Well, the movie starts to like the idea of like gay, straight, bi starts to fall away.
It's
completely.
not there at all. Yeah.
Like because James Spader and Vaughn end up having sex too, right?
Yeah.
And it starts to become less about it starts to become less about the intricacies of the human body and things like that than it does like the only reason with him getting sexually aroused by the scar is because it's in relation to a car accident, right?
Yeah.
And in relation to a violent act, you know.
That's exactly it.
The thing I'm getting at with pornography, which I find so interesting, is that like porn today is so readily available because of the internet, which is a piece of technology that has completely revolutionized the way we live. You know, as Mark Zuckerberg would say, porn is everywhere. I don't know. Congresswoman, there's lots of pornography, but none of it is on Facebook. But in the metaverse, if you want to fuck someone without legs, you can. So, but like what I mean is that like, because of that, a lot of people have said that one of the big problems with pornography is it encourages people to, first off, you're watching fake sex.
Yeah.
but it also means like people need more and more and more and more extreme and different to actually end up having any kind of sexual arousal.
Exactly.
And that's really harmful. That's been societally harmful to people. Like it just has.
Yeah.
You know, especially if people are young and they're watching it and stuff like that. I'm not being like, I don't want to be like a total Puritan. I don't think porn is like evil, but there are issues with it. There's definitely issues with it.
It's the volume and like how easily you
Yes.
can bombard someone's small, vulnerable psyche into being like, good sex is when there's 17 people in the room and only then. And then
only specifically 17.
Yeah.
And then I can get off.
16 is a deal breaker.
18, my head will explode. But what I mean is that like it's interesting that I think there's this connection with these without the book or the movie having been able to anticipate the volume of pornography that can be consumed today.
Yeah.
But because pornography is so intertwined with technology,
Yes.
that there's this interesting thing of like this movie is about people who need to go further, harder, faster,
Yes.
and more violent to get what they want.
Totally.
And that is how people have reacted to pornography today in lots of cases.
And that's what is
that's
100%.
the connection I see, and that's what I find so interesting about this film.
But like
Yeah.
in real life, there's all these barriers to gender and sexuality, and like people still being constrained within what they're taught and learned and not being able to be free. But in this movie, in Crash, it feels like a post-sex, post-gender fucking death drive, just free of any morality.
However, in pornography, people are allowed to be free.
Yes.
You look at the stuff that like where Pornhub
Yes,
like releases
100%.
like this is the most looked up thing in a certain state,
Yeah.
and where you're just kind of like, oh, but this state is stereotypically known to be racist towards a certain type of people, and
Yeah.
they turn out to be the most searched term in Pornhub or whatever.
Of course.
Like that, like it, I don't know. I don't. The relationship is certainly tenuous,
Yeah.
and the movie and the book came long before, as I said, you can anticipate the level that we're at with access to pornography.
Totally.
But I do think there's something really interesting between that links the two ideas.
That and Googling churning butter. Lady churns butter.
Lady
full
churns butter
clothes.
for 17 for 17
Lady churns
guys.
butter to completion, fully dressed.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mom.
Spreads it on pieces of toast, 17 toasts.
No electricity. Oh, hot. Okay.
Someone's been to Pennsylvania. All right. Sorry. Let's get back to the plot.
I just this movie should just be called Animal House or something, or just like animalistic death wish.
Are you sure it shouldn't just be called Car Crash Fucking?
You know what? That brings me to my top 5 for later, so no more.
All right. After we're getting back to the plot, after kind of Spader becomes like an acolyte of Vaughn,
Yeah.
and kind of falls under his sway.
Yeah.
He kind of brings Catherine into it too, because Catherine had noticed that Vaughn had been following her around in his big sexy car and his crazy jeans, as she says, which is my favorite line.
Crazy jeans.
And there's a scene where there's a scene where Catherine and James are having sex, and the whole time she's fantasizing about what she thinks James must be fantasizing about having sex with Vaughn.
Yeah.
And it's hard to explain this scene. It's very strange. And
They're in bed.
Yeah.
And they're embraced like man and woman.
As man and wife.
As man and wife.
Yeah.
And she turns to him and she's like, do you ever think about his anus?
Yeah.
And it's so funny to me that she said it in such a clinical way.
Yeah.
And then she points to his thing and be like, what about putting your penis in his anus?
You ever thought about that?
Ever thought about that? So that's not porn.
Thought
Would be
thought about what his car smells like?
all
the time.
all the like colloquial terms. Porn would
Yes.
be words that you use and feel something
That's
not
the
you
thing.
that you wouldn't feel in a hospital.
If you're watching this scene with the sound off and no subtitles on,
Yeah.
sexy scene.
Sexy scene.
Catherine, Deborah Unger's a beautiful. She's a model. She's a
Yeah,
beautiful
oh God,
woman.
of course.
Full frontal nudity. It's very sexy. And James Spader they're having sex, but then you listen to it and you're just the dialogue is pulling you
It
out.
pulls
of
you
anything,
out, man.
You know, yeah.
Much like he should have, cause bro. Okay, there's still time, but anyway, it's strange and very sanitized,
Yeah.
and that's why so much of this movie, even though there's like sex scene, car crash, sex scene, questioning your life, sex
Well-
scene, existential dread, awesome. None of that is hot.
Later, like just after this scene too, him and Vaughn go driving around the city and they get a prostitute.
Yeah.
And then like James just drives them around while Vaughn has sex with this prostitute in the back of the car. And it's like, again, it's not very sexy.
Not at all. Because like you see James Spader's hand on the steering wheel caressing it like he would typically caress a woman or another body.
Yeah.
And to him that cold metal feels
and like
similar.
The only time things are like sexy to them is when they're enclosed within the car, kind of.
Yeah. Especially if they're doing it in a just freshly crashed car.
Yeah. And then after this scene, which I find really interesting, is when him and Catherine and Vaughn go on a drive. They come across this accident and they kind of like photograph this accident and stuff, and they realize it's Seagrave having recreated the Jane Mansfield accident without Vaughn. And then they go into this car wash and Vaughn and Catherine have sex in the back of this car inside the car wash, and they're like just like completely encased inside of this piece of technology, which is really interesting. But
oh god,
later,
even during like that sex scene, of course Deborah Unger's character has just the expression of a crash test dummy. She's just like always stone cold, possibly sad. It's hard to tell. So you never know whether she's having a good time or not because she's almost always on the verge of tears.
This is probably one of the more disturbing scenes, I think, because I don't know. I'm not sure, but it very much borders on the line of sexual assault in a way.
It definitely felt like it.
But it is consensual.
Yeah.
However, the thing I was going to say is that later you see that she's covered in bruises and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's the way that it has to get more extreme.
Yeah.
And the drive towards extremity always kind of can result in exploitation and violence.
Yeah.
And that's what happens to Deborah Unger.
And maybe I'm reaching, but and we'll talk about the last scene, but before that, you kind of can tell that Deborah Unger's character is wanting to be hurt. And maybe that's part of her kink, or maybe it's part of just being tired of life and whatever suffering or inner monologue. We're not aware. We're not told anything about this character.
We don't know anything about any of the
We
characters.
don't know anything
really.
about any of them other than there's a fascinating scene when she's like in the front of a car, and I wrote this down. She like picks at the registration ticket in the front of the car and she kind of like anxiously chips away at it. Instead of gnawing it all out like a sticker on a phone, you tend to peel it all off. It's more satisfying that way, right? But she kind of goes at it little by little, and I don't know how long it's going to take her to peel it off, but she looks so morose.
Have you ever heard that it's a very pop psychology thing that got passed around in college all the time, but like people who picked at the labels of like beer bottles and shit were sexually frustrated? Did you ever hear that thing?
Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh.
I don't know. I have no idea where that came from, but it was one of those fucking pop psychology things that was passed around all the time. And I thought of that when I thought
Interesting.
of that
I thought it
scene.
would be like if you are frustrated, you have all control, so you could peel it right off to satisfaction, but guess not.
I don't know.
What do I know? I'm not a chemist of the brain.
You're not a psychologist, and nor do you write for BuzzFeed, so what do you know?
My head doctor? Get your head looked at. But yeah, it's cool that she is consenting.
Yes.
And she's open to the pain and whatever she wants to feel, she feels.
That scene, and in at the end of the movie, you do kind of see what she wants, right?
Yeah.
But not there yet, because that scene would maybe be the most disturbing had it not been for the scar scene.
Yes.
Which lots of people found like really, really disturbing.
So after her sex in the car with Vaughn's character, later you see her lying in bed and James Spader's next to her and he's gently caressing her scars. She's got bruises all over her thighs.
The part where he puts the hand over the finger, like the hand bruise shape, I thought it was really an interesting shot. Yeah.
And he does it very gently. He's taking care of her in a way that she just wants to be aware that she's covered in these bruises.
But it's also like a way for James to be closer to Vaughn.
Yeah.
Because he's seeing the violence that's been inflicted on Catherine, and it's like he's having a little love affair with Vaughn through her.
A
which
love affair
eventually
with the
is,
act of violence.
Yeah, which is eventually culminated later anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then he has a little love affair with Gabrielle, who is a woman with 2 leg braces and has a scar on the back of her thigh that looks like a vulva, which he said.
Yeah.
This scene is like, it's fairly intense. And yeah, lots of people found it really disturbing. I agree. I do remember very specifically in class when we talked about this. This was like a scene we talked about at length.
Really?
About how disturbing it was.
What
for
was
a
the
lot of people.
polarizing part?
Well, in the book, it's obviously described in some really insane terms. Like it's very, it like goes on for a long time about what's happening. And it was just like, lots of people were really disturbed by it. I don't know. Like there was also lots of people. I remember the prof, like some people being like, I couldn't finish this book. It's too much. And she was like, yeah, that's okay. I understand. Like it's a lot considering the other books we read. We read some pretty fucked up books in that class, which is great, but this was certainly the hardest for a lot of people to get through.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know, people just found it really disturbing. I find it it's pretty crazy. You've never seen anything like that in fucking
And it
a
would be
movie
absurd
ever.
if you didn't, right? It would be like, oh, cool, fiction.
Yeah, yeah.
Like no one would.
Can I say something I found really interesting?
Yeah.
I read in an article. I apologize. I forget which article I read it in, but I think it was a BBC retrospective on Crash. So when this movie came out, it was very controversial for many reasons, but like a couple big things happened, right? And like, so it was on the verge of being banned in America. It was on the verge of being banned in the UK. Canada was like, no, show it to everybody. It's the only Canadian thing going right now. It got a special award at the Cannes Film Festival for like audacity or some shit, which they don't give it out every year, but the jury can give it out by special request if they think a film is specifically pushing the boundaries of cinema in a way. And this movie is certainly doing that.
100%.
However, Francis Ford Coppola refused to hand the award to Cronenberg because he didn't like this movie. And with this scene with Gabrielle, who is a disabled woman, the BBC, they actually screened this movie for a group of 11 people with disabilities to talk about this scene, right?
Yeah.
And something I found really interesting was that the consensus of the group, that now this is only 11 people, don't get me wrong, it's not, they don't speak for everybody, but the consensus of the group was they were like, we do not like this movie. However, the depiction of Gabrielle, it's actually kind of nice because she's still seen as sexual and as a sexual person.
She's desired.
And she's desired, and she's also not given up because of her disability. And it's actually a positive portrayal of this. And again, it's 11 people. I don't really know. Other people might disagree.
There's also, we also have to say that she is like, you know, like a skinny blonde, like ideal body shape of the 80s.
Yeah, it's Rosanna Arquette. Like
it's Rosanna Arquette.
And,
so
but it was I just found it an interesting note about this scene because it's a divisive part of the film.
Yeah.
So basically, after this, we're kind of winding down because Vaughn and James chase each other in separate cars through the streets, and Vaughn drives over an overpass into a bus and dies. And then Catherine and James chase each other through the streets on the highway, and they get in a car accident, a deliberate car accident, and then have sex on the median, as you do. And the interesting thing about this is like the end where he asks her.
Well, he pushes her off the road.
Yes.
Right? And he runs down to see that her car is turned over and she's like crushed underneath it. Halfway her leg is trapped underneath the car. But it feels like a superficial injury because she's laying there, she's going, I'm okay. And then he says to her what she said to him in the first scene.
Maybe next time.
Yeah.
Which next time I assume is death.
Yeah.
Which goes back to the Catherine with the violence inflicted on her by Vaughn is like maybe that wasn't even far enough for what Catherine wants in the end, which might be to die in a car crash. Basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think for Catherine's character, like sex or any kind of extreme sex also wouldn't shake her out of this dread or like malaise that she's in.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's why they cast a person who's very kind of just like straight faced, doesn't emote, is just not wanting to be here.
Yeah, maybe.
And maybe that's the ending, that she's like, okay, maybe one last ecstasy can take you out. Oh, this movie.
This movie rules.
This movie
It's
fucking,
really, really
it
good.
makes you feel things, and horny isn't one of them.
Nope.
There is very little lust.
But if you want to stick your dick in a tailpipe, we're just have at it. You know?
Be
Yeah.
be careful. Be careful. Do it with protection. Okay.
Use lubrication, water-based.
Also, I learned way late that Howard Shore did the music
Yeah.
for this. So what's up, LOTR? Just mind melding with Cronenberg.
He does a lot of Cronenberg, so he did
Damn.
History of Violence and Eastern Promises too.
Oh,
so, yeah.
So the background score slaps.
Oh, yeah.
Whenever
great.
they're
Howard
chasing,
Shore
whatever
rules.
they're doing. Oh man,
You got a top 5?
I got a top 5. Okay, this movie's already confused with the other Your Dad's Crash, as you call it,
Yeah.
like the other 2004 Crash. So we need an alternate.
I don't know if
title.
anyone caught that, but this Crash is good and that Crash isn't.
That
Sorry,
Crash got an
but
Oscar, but
that
no,
Crash
probably
is not a
wouldn't know.
very good movie.
Sorry, Phil.
Yeah.
Top 5 alternate titles for this movie. Number 5, Squish.
Yeah. All right.
Squish works on both levels.
Yep.
So squish
Some
your loved
squishiness
one.
in here. Yeah.
Get squished by a car. Number 4, Meals on Wheels.
I don't think that one
No?
works. No.
No meals?
Nah.
They're snacking. They do be nibbling.
Ladies be snacking.
Ladies be snacking on wheels. Number 3, Age of Ultron, but horny. It's got the James Spader
Yeah.
in both instances.
Yeah.
It's got his sick voice. Perfect. And then
Yeah, War Machine does stick his dick in Iron Man's tailpipe.
they
in
are
that.
all machines, babe.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
are the ultimate machine.
Yeah.
No. Number 2, Honey, I Shrunk My Open Marriage.
The fuck?
They're not good. They're just not. I don't know. I feel like he's more into her than she is. So it's like, bro, just go about your ways. What do I know?
I mean, that's the title of a movie where like a polyamorous couple realizes they want to be monogamous. Like it's not.
Little bit.
Yeah.
Little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't stay poly.
Just
That's the ticket.
do whatever you want.
And number 1 alternate title for this movie. Really get the unsuspecting into the cinemas. Anyway, don't get hit by a bus because then you might come. So, so don't.
Be the worst thing that'll ever happen to you. Got anything more on this movie?
I have a fucking essay, but no,
Yeah.
no,
It's a good one.
it's a good one.
I can't say I recommend it, but it is a good movie.
Yeah. Do you know? There's someone mentioned on the internet that the women in this
I hate
movie, the internet, that this movie is like all the women in this movie are just a catalyst for James and Vaughn's character to have sex together.
It was the 90s.
It was the 90s.
Yeah.
So it made it seem like they waited forever for the two dudes to go at it. But I don't think that's true at all. I feel like
So what? Like
in that I don't think the women are just like practice for the men so that they can be together. I just think they don't give a shit whether it's a man or a woman. They just
I don't think so.
Yeah. So shut up, internet.
I think okay. Here's what I think about that. There is still this lingering stigma for this straight man, James Spader, ostensibly straight man, to have sex with a man, right? And I'm not saying that that's right. I'm just saying that that's how the movie kind of presents it.
Yeah.
But eventually, like I said, sexuality kind of gets stripped away
Yes.
into one monolith of sex and technology
Mhm.
crashing together. And whatever you're having sex with,
Yeah.
whoever you're having sex with, really doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
As portrayed by James Spader having sex with Elias Koteas and having sex with a scar. That's
Yeah.
not having sex with something that's not really a sexual organ.
There you
Right.
are.
And so they cease to matter. That's
Yeah.
kind of what I think is. And it just, I don't understand the criticism of this person that you're talking about. I know who it is. It was Peter Travers. No, I'm just kidding. But like, I don't, because it's like, well, the movies take place over time, so they build towards things.
Totally.
And yes, if the dance is around these two men and that's the real love story, then Why don't we just build towards it?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I don't
What do
think
you
that
want?
is the concept of it though.
Yeah.
I don't think it's about two people finding each other. It's really just one person finding sanity.
I just think it doesn't matter.
No.
Yeah. Because clearly relationships don't really matter to anybody in this movie.
Yeah.
Like everyone has sex with everyone else, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
What does matter is infections, guys. Please don't lick a fucking tattoo that's freshly made.
What really matters is the friends that they made along the way.
Okay. You know what? Don't make friends with your mouth on a fresh tattoo. Just don't. Just don't.
Why not? That's clearly
That was
safe.
the single
Only if you're over 18.
nastiest shit I've ever seen in my life. I had to look away. Just sepsis.
That's the part that made you look away.
That's the part. And it's so unfortunate because then it's like, oh, this sweet romance between two dudes. And they're like, oh, I'm just going to lick your Mercedes-Benz tattoo you got 6 seconds ago. No, let it heal.
Delicious.
Let it heal.
Delicious. Live your life, Vaughn.
Anyway, love is real. But so are infections. So be cool. Be cool about it.
Is it really love if you haven't gotten infected at least once?
Okay,
Come on.
stop. Just stop.
All right,
End
thank
it.
you for listening, everybody.
Time of death.
Don't watch this movie unless it sounds like you want to.
Yeah.
All right, thank you for listening. It's
Bye.
been The Low Ceiling.
I'm
You said-
free.
Yeah, well, I'm John.
Oh.
Now you can say bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye.